To calculate the number of bacterial cells that you would have after a certain number of generations, this is the equation that we want to use. In looking at this equation, this is the n subscript n, that's the number of cells that we have after a certain number of generations. The n subscript 0, that's the number of initial starting cells that you have, and then the n is equal to the number of generations that are actually there. So if we look at an example of this and we apply the equation, this question says that suppose that there are 30 bacterial cells present in a sample, and it's known that this bacteria species has a generation time of 60 minutes. And we want to know how many bacteria will be present after 48 hours. So just pulling out what we know about this, in this case, your n sub 0, that's the number of initial cells that we have, is 30. So we know we have 30 cells to start with, and we know that we have a generation time of 60 minutes. That would be equivalent to 1 hour. And then we have to think about the fact that we have 48 hours. So within the 48 hours, there will be 48 generations. And again, that is because the generation time is 60 minutes. So our n, the number of generations, is going to be equal to 48. And then we can take this information and plug it into the equation. The number of cells after 48 generations is going to be equal to the number of cells that we started with, and we're going to multiply that by 2 raised to 48. Okay, so that's the actual setup for it, and then we just need to use a calculator to figure out what that's going to be equal to. Once you've plugged that into your calculator, that is going to be equal to 8.4, and that's going to be times 10 to the 15th power. Okay, so that would be equal to the total number of cells that you're going to have, starting with 30, and this would be after 48 generations. If we look at one more example here, this question says a new species of bacteria is discovered that has a generation time of 15 minutes. Starting with 10 initial cells, how many bacterial cells can be expected after 4 hours? Okay, so looking at this, we know that our number of initial cells is going to be 10. Okay, so we can fill that in. And now we need to know the number of generations that we're actually looking at. The generation time is 15 minutes. So there would be, within 4 hours, we would have 16 generations. Okay, so again, we're just breaking up that 4 hours into how many 15-minute blocks we happen to have. So n is equal to 16. So the number of generations, or the number of cells that we have after 16 generations, is going to be equal to 10. And this will be times 2 raised to the 16th power. So when we plug that in and solve for it, this will be equal to 6.5, and that will be times 10 to the 5th power. Okay, so that's the number of bacterial cells that you'll have after 16 generations if we're starting with 10 initial cells.